Hi everyone, we are looking at a critical reasoning argument today. You can see the argument behind me and you can see the two parts of the argument are highlighted in bold. So we're looking at a boldface reasoning argument which asks you to identify the roles played by these two sentences. So we're going to read the argument. We're going to think about what the roles are that these two sentences play in the argument, and then we'll do the process of elimination with the answer options. Let's read it. Studies have established that children who watch 2 more hours of TV on an average daily basis during the first 15 years of their life were 50% more likely to be arrested for property crimes in the country. So this is a fact, right? This is studies have established, studies show this. If you watch 2 more hours of TV on an average daily basis, so extra 2 hours of TV, you're watching more TV, and that leads to a higher arrest rate for property crimes. Researchers believe that these studies clearly establish that violence in movies and TV contribute to aggressive behavior. So this is an opinion given by the researchers that, it's probably the violence in the movies and TV that contribute to aggressive behavior in real life. On the other hand, so now this opinion is getting refuted and we're getting into the author's side of the argument. On the other hand, there is clear evidence that the programs that the kids watch, there is no clear evidence that the programs that the kids watched on TV were violent in the first place. So there is no evidence that these programs that the kids watched for those extra 2 hours were violent. Even if we were to accept that TV watching contributed to the increased crime rate, so the author is willing to give some leeway, accept some part of the original argument. So yeah, maybe I will accept that it was the TV watching. Even if we accept that, it need not have been because of the nature of the programs. So it could have been the TV watching, but not necessarily violent TV watching. Perhaps. The perhaps tells that the author is either guessing or coming up with a hypothetical situation, right? Perhaps children who watch programs such as Adams and Samson, a funny sitcom about 2 blundering cops, began perceiving all cops as incompetent. So maybe it was not the nature of the program. Maybe I thought that all cops are incompetent and I thought I could get away with a crime, right? That could have been the reason for the increased crime rate. So we're having run the argument. Before we jump into these answer options, which all talk about the role that these two highlighted parts play in the entire argument, let's think about these two sentences and in our own words, let's come up with the role that these sentences play. Let's look at the first sentence. Researchers believe. So the word believe tells me that it's an opinion. We started reading by researchers believe. That's the first thing that we read. So this is an opinion of someone other than the author. It's not the author's opinion. And the researchers' belief is that violence in movies and TV contribute to aggressive behavior. The author is willing to accept that movies and TV could have contributed to the crime rate, but is not willing to accept that it was because of violence. He's just saying we don't have enough evidence to say that, right? So the author is kind of disagreeing with the researchers. He believes that it's too premature based on the information that we have to conclude that it's the violence. So the author is disagreeing with the researchers, right? We can figure out this much about this particular sentence. Perhaps children who watch programs. So this Adams and Samson example that the author gives is an example. An example of a situation where it was not violent programs that led to crime rate, right? So it supports the author's viewpoint. Is it the author's conclusion? It is absolutely not the author's conclusion. It simply supports the author's conclusion. The author's conclusion is that we don't have enough evidence. It is too premature to conclude that it's the violence that contributed to the increased crime rate, to aggressive behavior in real life. He is saying we don't know about anything about the nature of the programs. They could have watched a cartoon for all we know. They could have watched a funny sitcom for all we know. And that could have contributed to the violent aggressive behavior in real life. He's willing to give that it was probably the movies and the TVs that led to the increased crime rate. He's just saying we don't have enough evidence to conclude that it was the violent TV and movie programs that contributed to aggressive behavior. So ultimately, the author's conclusion is that we don't have enough evidence, right? And this example is an alternative scenario that the author is presenting for us to consider and we are considering this scenario only because we don't have enough evidence. So this example further validates the author's conclusion. So it supports the author, it's not the conclusion itself. Now let's look at the answer options. The first establishes a theory. You could call it a theory, yes, of the researchers, that the author later clearly refutes. Well, he does refute it, while the second presents the author's conclusion. And this is the part of the answer option that makes A wrong. The second is not the author's conclusion, as we just discussed. It is simply a hypothetical example, an alternative scenario that kind of goes to explaining and supporting the author's conclusion. So we'll eliminate A. The first is an interpretation made by researchers. Yeah, that is true. That the author contends against. Yes, the author does disagree with this statement, so he could say he contends against it. The second provides an alternative explanation. We just talked about how it's an alternative scenario, how it's a hypothetical example, so you could call it an alternative explanation for statistical data. What statistical data? The very first sentence in the argument. So B kind of works, so we'll hold on to it. Let's check the other options. C says the first is an opinion expressed by someone other than the author. It is an opinion. It is expressed by someone other than the author, and which the author is completely in disagreement with, while the second provides the reason for the author's doubt. Well, I wouldn't call it a reason because it's not an actual thing that happened. We don't have proof that Adams and Samson contributed to violent behavior any more than we have proof that violent TV contributed to violent behavior. We don't actually know what happened, so it's not a reason. It is more of a author's theory, right? It's more of an explanation. But more than that, I would not go with C because it says the author is completely in disagreement with the researchers, and that is a bigger problem. The author is willing to give some leeway to the researcher's side of the argument. He does say, even if we accept that movies and TV programs contributed to the violent behavior, contributed to the crime rate. So he's willing to accept a part of the researcher's argument. He just thinks that we don't have enough proof, enough evidence to conclude everything that the researchers have concluded. We only have enough evidence for some of it. That's ultimately the point that the author is making. So he is not completely in disagreement with the researchers, and that's another reason to eliminate C. The first is a fact, and right there you can stop reading and you can go ahead and eliminate D, because the first is not a fact. We saw that the first boldface was the researcher's opinion, right? So it's not a fact. It's not supporting the researcher's conclusion. It is the researcher's conclusion. While the second is the author's conclusion. Everything about D as in delta is incorrect. Its second is not the author's conclusion. The first one is not a fact supporting the researchers. The first is the researcher's conclusion. Very easy to eliminate answer option. Let's check out E. The first is a clearly proven opinion. There is no such thing as a clearly proven opinion, is there? I mean, you can have an opinion or you can have clearly proven facts. If something is clearly proven to be true, then it's no longer an opinion. It's not my opinion that the earth revolves around the sun. It's a proven fact. It's not an opinion that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. If it's been clearly proven, then it's a fact. So the words clearly proven opinion is kind of like an oxymoron, right? You won't call it an opinion if it has been clearly proven. So that's enough to doubt E, but we'll check out the rest of the option. Even the first is a clearly proven opinion, even if the author disagrees with it, while the second is an ambiguous opinion that has no supporting data. Yes, the second doesn't have any supporting data, but it's not an ambiguous opinion. It's just a theory that the author is proposing. Why don't we look into this, right? It's more of a question that the author is raising, more of an alternative viewpoint that the author is presenting. It's not about being ambiguous versus clear. E is not our answer. So there's only one option that correctly describes the role played by those two statements, and that's choice B. Whoa, hold on, don't go yet. I have a bonus CR argument for you. The premise of the argument is that you're watching this video, which is a fact. The assumption that I'm making is you do like our video discussions of CR questions, and therefore the conclusion that I'm going to draw is that you have hit the like, subscribe, and bell icon. So prove my conclusion right, strengthen the argument, and hit that subscribe button.